Your Honor, before you accept their report, ask them why my Federal Bureau of Investigation badge is listed as stolen property. The sentence crossed the courtroom with such calm precision that even the bailiff stopped moving. Judge Eleanor Whitfield looked down from the bench, first at the sealed evidence bag resting beside the clerk, then at the black woman standing between two white police officers near the defense table. Danielle Brooks wore a dark blue blouse beneath a plain black coat, her wrists secured in front of her, her expression controlled and unreadable. Officer Travis Cole stood to her right with the confidence of a man who believed his report had already decided the truth. Officer Megan Walsh held the arrest folder against her chest, but the certainty in her face had begun to fade. 47 minutes earlier, Danielle had been walking through the third-floor corridor of the federal courthouse after leaving a confidential meeting with Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed. Inside her black leather case were copies of arrest reports, a federal preservation order, and an encrypted evidence drive containing months of records connected to suspected misconduct inside the local police department. She wore no visible agency jacket and no identification around her neck. The assignment required discretion. Her badge and federal credentials were secured inside the case, beside a printed verification number that any officer could confirm in less than 1 minute. Travis noticed her near a restricted stairwell and stepped into her path. "This area is closed to the public," he said. Danielle stopped immediately. "I have authorized access." Identification. She opened the case carefully and presented her credentials. Travis looked at the badge, then at her face. "Where did you get this?" Danielle did not react to the accusation. "The verification number is printed beneath the seal." Megan joined them and examined the credential wallet without calling the number. "It could be counterfeit," she said. Danielle glanced toward the courthouse camera above the corridor. "Then verify it before making another decision." Travis heard the request as a challenge. "You do not tell us how to conduct an investigation." Danielle kept both hands visible. "I am asking you to follow the procedure printed on the credential." He refused. She requested a supervisor. He refused again. Then he took the black case, sealed the badge inside an evidence bag, and described it over the radio as suspected stolen law enforcement property. Imagine standing in a courthouse while the proof of your identity is transformed into evidence against you, not because it failed verification, but because no one was willing to verify it. Danielle did not raise her voice. She looked at Megan's nameplate, then at Travis's body camera. "Record the exact time," she said. "Preserve the corridor footage, your body camera files, and every radio transmission." Travis gave a dismissive smile. "You sound like you think you are in charge." Danielle met his eyes. "No, I sound like someone who knows the truth will need timestamps." They escorted her directly into a morning arraignment session, believing the judge could resolve the matter quickly. The court clerk, Olivia Hayes, reviewed the arrest sheet and noticed the problem immediately. The listed property included one active federal credential, one encrypted government drive, and one sealed order addressed to the United States Attorney's Office. She quietly sent an alert to Nathan Reed. Now, beneath the cold courtroom lights, Judge Whitfield held the report in both hands. "Officer Cole," she said, "did you contact the federal verification number?" Travis hesitated. "1 second, then 2. "Not yet, Your Honor." Danielle looked toward the courtroom clock. "Please enter that answer into the record," she said. At that exact moment, the rear doors opened, and Nathan Reed entered carrying a federal authorization folder. Behind him walked Special Agent Marcus Grant. The entire room turned. Nathan approached the bench, looked at Danielle, and spoke clearly. "Your Honor, the woman standing before you is Supervisory Special Agent Brooks. She is here under federal authority, and the officers who arrested her are already named in the investigation contained inside that case." The silence inside Judge Eleanor Whitfield's courtroom changed immediately. Moments earlier, it had been the silence of spectators waiting for an ordinary arraignment. Now it carried the weight of a federal investigation unfolding in public. Officer Travis Cole looked toward the sealed evidence bag, then toward Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed, as though he expected someone to explain how certainty had turned against him so quickly. Officer Megan Walsh lowered the arrest folder slightly. Danielle Brooks remained between them, her wrists still secured, but nothing about her posture suggested helplessness. She stood straight beneath the cold overhead lights, watching each person make the next decision. Judge Whitfield turned toward the bailiff. Remove the restraints immediately. The bailiff stepped forward, released Danielle's wrists, and returned to his position. Danielle did not rub her hands or adjust her sleeves. She looked at the courtroom clock and spoke quietly to Olivia Hayes. Please record the time the detention ended. Olivia nodded and entered it into the official docket. Nathan placed the federal authorization folder on the bench. Your Honor, Supervisory Special Agent Brooks was conducting a confidential review of arrest documentation and evidence handling practices within the local department. The black case seized from her contains protected federal material. Judge Whitfield looked toward Travis. Did you open the case after she identified it as federal property? We conducted a lawful evidence inspection, he replied. That was not the question. His jaw tightened. Yes, Your Honor. Special Agent Marcus Grant moved toward the evidence table, but did not touch anything. The seal is disturbed, he said. Megan glanced at Travis. We needed to confirm what was inside. Danielle finally turned toward her. You had a federal verification number, a courthouse camera, a court clerk, and access to a supervisor. Which of those did you use before opening the case? Megan's lips parted, but no answer came. Imagine realizing that every shortcut you called procedure has become a question asked beneath a judge's seal. Travis stepped forward. She was near a restricted stairwell without visible credentials. We had to act. Nathan opened another document. The corridor access log confirms Agent Brooks was cleared at 8:14 this morning. Her authorization was entered by the United States Attorney's Office. Olivia checked her terminal. That is correct, Your Honor. Judge Whitfield looked down at the arrest report. This document states that she refused to provide verifiable identification. Danielle's voice remained calm. My credential number appears on Officer Cole's body camera before he describes it as unverifiable. The judge turned toward the court technician. Can the recording be secured now? Marcus answered. A federal preservation request has already been transmitted. We asked the court to order immediate retention of all body camera files, corridor video, radio traffic, evidence room logs, and communications related to this arrest. Travis looked toward Nathan. You were prepared for this. Nathan met his eyes. We were prepared to preserve evidence connected to an existing investigation. You created today's evidence yourself. A murmur moved through the gallery. Judge Whitfield raised one hand, and the room quieted. She ordered the black case transferred to federal custody under court supervision, instructed both officers to remain available for questioning, and directed the clerk to seal the arrest record pending review. Danielle watched Olivia document every order. The process mattered now because it had failed less than an hour earlier. Marcus carefully examined the encrypted drive through the clear evidence bag. The device appears intact, he said, but access attempts must be checked. Danielle nodded. Start with the evidence log. Olivia pulled up the entry. Her expression changed. There are 2 access signatures. Nathan looked toward the officers. Who was the second? Megan stared at the screen. Travis did not. The name belonged to Lieutenant Gregory Sloan, the supervisor who had closed 3 earlier complaints connected to Travis. Danielle looked toward Judge Whitfield. Your Honor, this is no longer only about an unlawful detention. Someone was waiting for that case to enter police custody. Judge Eleanor Whitfield ordered the courtroom doors closed while Special Agent Marcus Grant contacted the Federal Evidence Response Team. The gallery remained seated, but the mood had shifted from surprise to unease. Lieutenant Gregory Sloan was not present, yet his signature now sat at the center of every question. Danielle Brooks stood beside the prosecution table, watching Olivia Hayes enlarge the evidence log on her monitor. The first entry belonged to Officer Megan Walsh at 8:41 that morning. The second belonged to Sloan 6 minutes later. According to the system, he had accessed the sealed black case before it ever reached the courthouse evidence room. Where was the case at 8:47? Judge Whitfield asked. Travis Cole answered slowly. In our transport vehicle, Your Honor. Nathan Reed turned toward him. Was Lieutenant Sloan inside that vehicle? No. Then how did his credentials enter the log? Travis looked toward Megan. She avoided his eyes. Danielle noticed the exchange. Someone used his account remotely, she said, or someone entered the signature afterward. Marcus requested the original metadata rather than the visible report. Olivia contacted Courthouse Technology Services and began exporting the unedited access history under the judge's order. Imagine watching a simple arrest report open into a corridor of hidden decisions, each one made by someone who believed no one would ever examine the timestamps. Travis shifted his weight. We followed instructions from command. Danielle turned toward him. What instructions? Lieutenant Sloan told us to secure anyone carrying unauthorized federal material. Nathan's expression sharpened. When did he tell you that? Travis hesitated. This morning. Before or after you stopped Agent Brooks? The silence answered first. Megan lowered the folder in her hands. Before, she said. Travis looked at her sharply, but the truth had already entered the record. Judge Whitfield leaned forward. Explain. Megan swallowed. Lieutenant Sloan sent a message during roll call. He said someone might try to remove sensitive evidence from the courthouse and that we should treat unverified federal credentials as suspicious. Danielle looked toward Nathan. Their investigation had been confidential. Only a small circle knew she would be carrying the encrypted drive. Who attended that roll call? She asked. Megan listed 7 officers and 2 supervisors. Marcus wrote every name down. Nathan requested immediate preservation of the department messaging system, duty roster, and Sloan's communications from the previous 48 hours. Judge Whitfield granted the request. Olivia's computer chimed. The raw access data had arrived. She opened the file and read the source location aloud. Sloan's signature had been entered from a terminal inside the police department's internal review office. The timestamp was real. Someone there had accessed the evidence record while Danielle was still being transported. Marcus looked at the sealed drive. He knew the case had been taken. Danielle's voice remained calm, but something colder had entered it. He was monitoring the arrest in real time. Travis stepped back from the table. We did not know about any federal investigation. You did not need to know, Danielle replied. You only needed to follow the procedure you refused to follow. A federal evidence team arrived minutes later and took custody of the Black case beneath the judge's supervision. The technicians confirmed that the drive had not been opened, but 2 unauthorized password attempts had been made from the police department network. Nathan placed the result before the court. Your Honor, we believe this arrest may have been used to intercept federal evidence. Judge Whitfield ordered Travis and Megan separated for independent interviews and directed that Lieutenant Sloan be located without warning. Danielle watched the officers leave through opposite doors. Neither looked confident now. What began as a public humiliation had become something far more serious. The people who had dragged her into court believed they were controlling the story. Instead, they had delivered the hidden system directly into a room where every word became permanent. The federal interviews began in separate rooms on the courthouse's lower level, while Judge Eleanor Whitfield kept the original proceedings sealed. Danielle Brooks remained in a secure conference room with Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed and Special Agent Marcus Grant, reviewing the first data recovered from Lieutenant Gregory Sloan's internal review terminal. The screen showed a sequence of searches performed before Danielle entered the courthouse that morning. Her name, her federal case number, the vehicle assigned to Marcus, the scheduled location of Nathan's meeting. Sloan had not simply reacted to the arrest. He had anticipated her presence. He had access to information outside his authority, Marcus said. Nathan opened the federal access log. Only 9 people knew Agent Brooks would carry the drive today. Danielle studied the timestamps. One search occurred at 6:12 in the morning. Another followed 23 minutes later, using a police department administrator account. He was looking for the evidence before I arrived, she said. Her voice remained level, but the meaning of the discovery settled heavily across the room. Imagine learning that the person who called your identity suspicious had already searched your name before pretending not to recognize it. In the first interview room, Megan Walsh sat across from 2 federal investigators with her hands folded tightly on the table. She admitted that Sloan had warned officers about a supposed security threat during roll call. He had shown them a blurred image of Danielle entering a government building several weeks earlier and described her as someone who might impersonate federal personnel. Did he provide a name? The investigator asked. No. Did he provide a warrant, alert number, or verified threat notice? Megan shook her head. He said it came from a confidential source. And when Agent Brooks presented a valid credential, Megan looked toward the recording camera. Officer Cole said Sloan's warning was enough. In the second room, Travis Cole offered a different version. He claimed Megan had encouraged the arrest and that he believed the badge had already been reported stolen. The investigator placed his body camera transcript before him. The recording captured him saying the credential could be counterfeit before Megan arrived. "Which statement is accurate?" she asked. Travis stared at the page. The situation was moving quickly. "You stood in that corridor for 9 minutes. The certainty left his face. Outside the interview rooms, courthouse deputies located Sloan's department vehicle in the underground garage, but Sloan was not inside. His police phone had been left on the passenger seat, powered off. Nathan requested location records for Sloan's assigned tablet and access card. Judge Whitfield approved an emergency preservation order, while local command suspended Sloan's credentials across every city system. Olivia Hayes then contacted Danielle with another discovery. The clerk had reviewed earlier arrest filings signed by Travis and Megan. For contained the same unusual phrase. Subject displayed potentially fraudulent federal identification. None involved federal credentials. 3 involved black professionals who had presented government employee badges from local agencies. Danielle asked for the files immediately. 1 belonged to a black public defender stopped outside the courthouse. Another involved a black health inspector questioned while entering a city office. The third concerned a black transit supervisor accused of using a copied access card that was later confirmed as valid. Each complaint had reached Sloan's office. Each had been closed. He created language broad enough to turn legitimate identification into suspicion, Danielle said. Marcus placed the files beside the morning roll call message, then trained officers to repeat it. A courthouse deputy entered with news from the garage. Sloan's access card had been used 12 minutes earlier at an off-site municipal records warehouse less than 3 miles away. Nathan stood immediately. He is trying to reach archived files. Danielle closed the case folder and looked toward the security camera in the corner. Then preserve the warehouse system before he can change the record. Marcus contacted the federal response team while Judge Whitfield authorized immediate protection of the site. Danielle did not rush toward the door. She remained where the court could see her because the investigation no longer depended on surprise. It depended on procedure. "Let him make one more decision," she said. "This time, every system is watching." The municipal records warehouse stood behind a chain-link fence on the edge of the civic district, its concrete walls washed in the pale light of late afternoon. Federal agents reached the entrance within minutes of the access alert, but they did not rush inside. Special Agent Marcus Grant coordinated with warehouse security, confirmed the preservation order, and instructed the building manager to lock every records terminal against deletion or modification. Inside, Lieutenant Gregory Sloan stood near a row of archive cabinets with an open file box beside him. He had not damaged anything. He had not attempted to leave. But the computer screen at the nearby desk displayed a search for complaint records connected to Officer Travis Cole, Officer Megan Walsh, and several Black City employees whose identification had once been labeled suspicious. "Step away from the terminal," Marcus said. Sloan turned slowly. His expression showed annoyance rather than fear, as though the investigation itself were an inconvenience created by people who did not understand his authority. "I am reviewing department records," he replied. "Your access was suspended 27 minutes ago. Those records belong to my division. They belong to the public agency that preserved them." Sloan looked toward the federal evidence technicians entering behind Marcus. Every terminal was photographed before anyone touched it. Every open folder was numbered. Every movement was recorded. Imagine spending years deciding which reports deserved to survive, then discovering that your final attempt to control the record had become the clearest record of all. Back at the courthouse, Danielle Brooks watched the warehouse camera feed beside Nathan Reed and Judge Eleanor Whitfield. She remained silent as technicians confirmed that Sloan had searched for 7 archive complaints and opened a draft deletion request prepared months earlier. The request targeted body camera links attached to cases classified as administrative misunderstandings. Nathan looked toward Danielle. He planned this before today. Danielle studied the document date. He planned for the possibility that someone would examine the pattern. At the warehouse, Marcus asked Sloan why he had accessed the files after his credentials were suspended. Sloan folded his arms. Because federal agents were turning routine encounters into accusations of racism. The complaints were already allegations of unequal treatment, Marcus replied. You classified them as routine before reviewing the recordings. Sloane's expression hardened. Officers have to make judgments. Yes, and supervisors have to examine whether those judgments were supported. The technicians recovered an external storage device from the desk. Sloane claimed it contained training materials. A preliminary scan showed copied complaint summaries, officer performance evaluations, and internal messages discussing which cases might create political risk if released. No evidence had been erased, but the attempted transfer gave investigators a complete map of the files Sloane considered dangerous. At the courthouse, Olivia Hayes compared those file names with the arrests already under review. 5 involved Black residents. 2 involved Latino city contractors. All 7 contained valid identification that officers had described as questionable. Danielle read the summaries one by one. The same language appears in every case, she said. Potentially fraudulent credentials. Uncooperative explanation. Officer uncertainty. Nathan opened the corresponding video transcripts, and each person offered verification. Judge Whitfield looked toward the courtroom seal above the empty bench. Then the problem was never missing information. Danielle nodded. The problem was deciding whose information deserved belief. Travis and Megan remained in separate interview rooms when the warehouse findings arrived. Megan agreed to cooperate fully and provided copies of roll call messages in which Sloane encouraged officers to treat challenges to their assumptions as signs of deception. Travis continued insisting that he had followed training. The investigator placed Sloane's messages beside the official department policy requiring verification before detention. You were trained to confirm credentials, she said. Sloane encouraged you not to. Which instruction did you choose? Travis looked at the documents for a long time. The one that made me feel in control. For the first time, his answer matched the evidence. Danielle returned to the courtroom as Marcus formally transferred the warehouse files into federal custody. The judge ordered every related arrest record sealed against alteration and scheduled an emergency review for the following morning. Danielle looked at the evidence bags lined across the clerk's table. The officers had brought her into court believing her badge was the suspicious object. Now the court understood that the badge had never been the threat. The threat was a system that treated verification as optional whenever prejudice had already supplied an answer. The emergency review began at 8:30 the next morning, with every seat in Judge Eleanor Whitfield's courtroom occupied by attorneys, investigators, court staff, and representatives from the police department. The evidence recovered from the warehouse had been arranged across 2 secure tables, each item numbered and sealed beneath federal supervision. Danielle Brooks sat beside Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed, while Special Agent Marcus Grant stood near the court technician reviewing the preserved digital records. Officer Travis Cole and Officer Megan Walsh entered separately with legal representatives. Lieutenant Gregory Sloane appeared by remote video from a secure interview room, his expression controlled but tense. Judge Whitfield opened the hearing by directing Olivia Hayes to read the preservation findings into the record. 7 archive complaints had been accessed after Sloane's authority was suspended. A draft deletion request had targeted body camera links connected to disputed identification cases. An external storage device contained copied reports, evaluations, and internal messages discussing which complaints might create public or political concern. Nothing had been erased, but the intention behind the access could no longer be dismissed as routine review. Nathan approached the evidence table. Your Honor, the federal team has now compared the official reports with the original recordings. He displayed the first case on the courtroom monitor. A Black public defender stood outside the courthouse presenting a valid county identification card. The written report described him as unable to establish a legitimate purpose. The video showed him explaining his scheduled hearing 3 times. The second case involved a Black health inspector whose city badge was labeled suspicious even after a verification call confirmed it. The third involved a Black transit supervisor whose access card was treated as fraudulent until a senior official arrived. Different people, different locations, the same language. Imagine seeing your truth reduced to a phrase designed to make doubt sound reasonable. Judge Whitfield turned toward Sloane's screen. Did your office approve these reports? Sloane answered carefully. My office reviewed officer safety concerns based on the information available. Danielle rose only after the judge recognized her. The information was available, she said. It was simply excluded. Marcus displayed the review logs. Sloan's staff opened written summaries, but did not access the attached video files in 5 of the 7 cases. In 2 others, the recordings were opened for less than 30 seconds. That is not review, Danielle continued. That is approval without examination. Sloan leaned toward his camera. You are interpreting administrative shortcuts as discriminatory intent. Danielle met his image on the monitor. Intent will be investigated. The pattern is already documented. Megan's attorney informed the court that she would provide full cooperation, including roll call messages, supervisor instructions, and details about prior complaints. Travis's representative requested that his statements from the previous evening be excluded from the administrative record. Judge Whitfield declined to decide the issue during the preservation hearing, but ordered every interview retained. Nathan then presented the most important discovery. Metadata from the department server showed that Sloan had searched Danielle's name before distributing the morning warning. He knew she was a federal employee. He knew the credentials could be verified. Yet the roll call message described her only as a possible impersonator. The courtroom fell silent. Why? Judge Whitfield asked. Sloan looked away from the camera. I believe the federal inquiry was targeting the department unfairly. Danielle's expression did not change. So you turned the investigator into the suspect. Sloan offered no answer. The judge ordered his administrative access permanently blocked pending further proceedings, referred the evidence for an obstruction review, and directed an independent examination of every arrest report connected to the repeated language. Travis and Megan remained suspended. The earlier cases would be reopened, and each person affected would receive notice that the official record was under review. As the hearing ended, Danielle looked toward the sealed badge resting beside the clerk. Less than a day earlier, it had been listed as suspicious property. Now it sat beneath the court's protection, not because the metal had changed, but because the people in the room had finally agreed to examine the truth attached to it. A badge does not make a statement true, Danielle said quietly. It makes the person wearing it responsible for proving that it is. The reopened cases moved from sealed files into independent interviews over the next 4 days. Danielle Brooks insisted that the first voices heard should belong to the people whose identification had been doubted long before anyone knew a federal investigation existed. The first was Marcus Ellison, the black public defender stopped outside the courthouse while carrying a valid county credential and a schedule showing 3 hearings that morning. He sat across from Special Agent Marcus Grant and a civil rights attorney, speaking with the careful patience of someone who had repeated the same facts many times without being believed. Officer Cole looked at my badge, Marcus Ellison said. Then he looked at me and decided the badge was the suspicious part. The second interview belonged to Dr. Naomi Carter, the black health inspector whose city identification had been confirmed over the telephone while she waited in a public hallway. Her report claimed she continued acting evasively after verification. The original recording showed her asking one question. May I go to the inspection I was assigned to complete? Imagine having the truth confirmed in real time, only to discover that confirmation still was not enough to change how someone had already judged you. Danielle watched each recording beside Nathan Reed and Judge Eleanor Whitfield's appointed review counsel. She did not interrupt. She marked timestamps, compared official language, and circled every place where the reports became more threatening than the videos. In one file, a calm explanation became a refusal to cooperate. In another, a request for a supervisor became an attempt to challenge authority. The words changed. The pattern did not. Megan Walsh provided investigators with archived roll call notes and admitted that Lieutenant Gregory Sloan frequently encouraged officers to treat confident explanations as rehearsed deception. He said people with prepared answers were usually hiding something, she explained. Danielle looked toward her. Did that apply equally to everyone? Megan lowered her eyes. No. Travis Cole remained less willing to cooperate. During his formal interview, he insisted that uncertainty required decisive action. The investigator placed Danielle's credential verification procedure beside his report. You had a clear method to resolve the uncertainty, she said. Why did you choose detention instead? Travis stared at the paper. Because I believed the credential was false. Before or after you checked it? The room remained silent. Danielle later reviewed that exchange without satisfaction. A confession of poor judgment could not repair the records already written, the hearings missed, or the dignity taken in public. Accountability had to reach further. Nathan obtained authorization to notify every person named in the reopened cases. Their official files would be corrected where the evidence contradicted the reports. Complaint decisions would be removed from Sloan's former review unit and transferred to an independent panel. Body camera footage connected to disputed identification could no longer be excluded from summaries. Supervisors would be required to document why verification was rejected before any detention based solely on question credentials. At the end of the fourth day, Judge Whitfield reconvened a limited public session. Marcus Ellison, Naomi Carter, and several others sat behind the federal table. Sloan appeared remotely with counsel. Travis and Megan remained suspended. Danielle stood before the bench holding the same credential wallet that had once been sealed as suspicious property. This court has now seen what happens when authority treats verification as optional, she said. The harm was not only that valid identification was doubted. The harm was that doubt became official language, and official language became a shield against accountability. Judge Whitfield nodded toward the residents seated behind her. What remedy are you requesting? Danielle turned slightly, so the people whose cases had been reopened remained visible. Correct the records. Preserve the evidence. Protect those who reported the pattern. And make sure no future complaint is judged by the same office whose conducted questions. Nathan submitted the federal corrective agreement. The judge accepted it for review and ordered immediate implementation of the preservation measures. Danielle placed her badge on the table beside the reopened files. A badge is not proof that the person wearing it is right, she said. It is proof that the person wearing it must be answerable when they are wrong. The federal corrective agreement took effect the following Monday, but Danielle Brooks knew that a signed order was only the beginning. Inside a secure review room beneath the courthouse, independent attorneys, evidence analysts, and civilian oversight members gathered around a long table covered with reopened files. Each case now included the original report, body camera footage, verification records, and the statement of the person whose identity had been questioned. Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed placed the first corrected record before Marcus Ellison. The old summary described him as unable to establish a legitimate reason for entering the courthouse. The revised findings stated that he had presented valid county identification, confirmed hearings, and lawful access before being detained without sufficient cause. Marcus read the page slowly. So the record finally says what happened, he said. Danielle nodded. Yes. It does not give me that morning back. No, she replied. But it prevents the false version from following you forward. Across the room, Dr. Naomi Carter reviewed her corrected file, while Special Agent Marcus Grant explained how the new system would preserve every disputed identification case automatically. No supervisor connected to the original encounter could control the review. No summary could be approved without comparing it to available video. No complaint could be classified as a routine misunderstanding simply because no one had raised their voice. Imagine how much harm can hide inside a calm encounter when the official record belongs only to the person wearing the uniform. Judge Eleanor Whitfield entered shortly before noon to receive the first compliance report. Officer Megan Walsh appeared with counsel and confirmed that she had provided every roll call message, training note, and supervisor instruction in her possession. Her cooperation did not erase her choices, but it helped investigators identify 6 additional cases carrying the same language. Officer Travis Cole remained suspended and faced a formal disciplinary hearing. Lieutenant Gregory Sloan had been removed from command authority while federal prosecutors reviewed whether his actions amounted to obstruction and unlawful interference with protected evidence. Nathan presented the court with the final comparison chart. 12 reports contained language unsupported by the recordings. 9 involved Black residents. 2 involved Latino municipal employees. 1 involved an Asian American federal contractor whose credential had been verified but still described as questionable. Judge Whitfield studied the pattern in silence. What changes are now permanent? She asked. Danielle rose. Independent complaint review, automatic preservation of related video, documented verification requirements, external auditing of report language, and direct notice to every person whose record is reopened. And officer training? Training will no longer teach control without accountability. Every scenario must begin with evidence verification and end with written justification. The judge looked toward the residents seated behind the federal team. Will they have access to the findings? Yes, with privacy protections and their consent. Marcus Ellison stood after receiving permission to speak. For years, the department treated our stories like opinions and its reports like facts, he said. The cameras showed that distinction was false. Danielle watched Travis through the remote hearing screen. His expression no longer carried the certainty he had shown in the corridor. When asked why he repeatedly rejected available verification, he answered quietly, "I trusted my suspicion more than the process." The sentence did not excuse him. It finally named the failure. Judge Whitfield ordered the disciplinary record preserved and referred every corrected case to the appropriate civil review authority. When the session ended, Olivia Hayes returned Danielle's credential wallet across the clerk's table. The badge caught the afternoon light for a moment before Danielle closed it. She did not hold it up in victory. She placed it beside the corrected records. "This badge did not make me worthy of being believed," she said. It only forced the system to notice how many worthy people it had already ignored. 10 weeks later, the courthouse corridor looked almost identical to the morning Danielle Brooks had been stopped there. The same polished floors reflected the overhead lights. The same security cameras watched the restricted stairwell. The same courtroom doors opened and closed beneath the quiet rhythm of public business. But the procedures behind those ordinary movements had changed. Every questioned government credential now required documented verification before detention. Every disputed identification encounter triggered automatic preservation of body camera and hallway footage. Every complaint moved to an independent review unit outside the command structure of the officers involved. Danielle returned to the courthouse wearing the same plain black coat and carrying the same leather case. But this time she entered without ceremony. She did not want staff to behave differently because they recognized her. She wanted to see whether the new system worked for someone they did not. Near the security desk, a young black woman in a gray business suit presented a county employee badge to a newly assigned officer. The scanner failed to read it on the first attempt. The officer did not accuse her of carrying false identification. He checked the printed verification number, called the county office, and confirmed her appointment within 2 minutes. "Thank you for your patience," he said, returning the badge. The woman nodded and continued toward the elevators. Danielle watched from several yards away. No crowd gathered. No report was written. No dignity was taken. Progress did not always arrive with a dramatic announcement. Sometimes it appeared as the harmful moment that never happened. Inside Judge Eleanor Whitfield's courtroom, the final compliance hearing began shortly after 9. Assistant United States Attorney Nathan Reed submitted the independent review findings. 12 records had been formally corrected. 9 complainants had received written acknowledgments that their identification was valid and that their detention or delay lacked sufficient justification. Officer Megan Walsh accepted disciplinary action, completed an external accountability program, and agreed to testify about Lieutenant Gregory Sloan's instructions. Officer Travis Cole was dismissed after the department concluded that he repeatedly ignored verification procedures, submitted misleading reports, and relied on biased assumptions when evaluating black professionals. His certification record was referred to the State Oversight Board. Sloan resigned before the administrative process ended, but the federal obstruction inquiry remained active, supported by the warehouse access logs, unauthorized password attempts, and internal messages recovered from his office. Danielle listened without satisfaction. Consequences mattered, but consequences were not the same as repair. Marcus Ellison could not recover the hearings he nearly missed. Naomi Carter could not erase the humiliation of having valid credentials treated as suspicious. Others had carried false language in official records for years. The court could correct those records. It could not pretend the damage had never existed. Judge Whitfield invited Danielle to make the final statement. She rose slowly and placed her closed credential wallet on the table. This case began when 2 officers looked at a valid badge and decided the person holding it was less believable than their suspicion, she said. It became larger when we discovered that the same decision had been repeated, documented, and protected. She turned toward the residents seated behind the federal team. The lesson is not that officers should respect people who carry powerful credentials. The lesson is that every person deserves verification, fairness, and dignity before authority makes a judgment. Travis appeared on the remote disciplinary screen for the final entry of findings. He looked toward Danielle and spoke quietly. I thought control meant making the decision quickly. Danielle met his eyes. Control without truth is only certainty wearing a uniform. Judge Whitfield entered the corrective agreement into the permanent record and closed the hearing. Outside, Danielle paused beside the corridor camera that had captured the first encounter. Nathan joined her, holding the final report. Do you think the system changed? He asked. Danielle looked toward the security desk, where another visitor was being treated with patience and respect. A system changes every time the next person is treated better than the last, she said. Then she walked toward the courthouse doors, her badge hidden inside her case. They had dragged her into court believing the room belonged to their authority. She left after reminding them that the room, the badge, and the law belonged to the truth.